Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing personal stories of transformation and collective healing from people who have been touched by cancer. My name is Claire DeLaslo, and I'll be guiding today's conversation. Our guest, Dorothy Paredes, wrote a beautifully candid memoir about her cancer experience called 26 and Fucked. If you'd like to read it, write to us at info@cancertalks.com and we'll send you a copy. Dorothy is also the founder of the Atrium Foundation, an organization that supports people affected by cancer so they can thrive by covering expenses that aren't covered by insurance, including things that are outside of the realm of medical expenses entirely. Dorothy and her team believe that mental health and wellness is as important as physical recovery. They've supported people with everything from rent to alternative treatments to school supplies for their children. Dorothy's long-term vision with the Atrium Foundation includes building partnerships between therapists and oncologists so that people have built-in access to emotional support at every step of the cancer journey. This conversation was extremely healing for me as the host, and I hope it will be the same for you as a listener. Hi, Dorothy. Welcome to Cancer Talks.
Hello. Lovely to be here today. Super excited.
I was thinking to start, could you introduce yourself as if you're introducing yourself to a new friend? Like, what should we know about you?
Yeah. I born and raised in Austin, Texas, and just recently moved to Southern Oregon. So going through like a pretty big life transition, getting settled in a new spot. But it's been wonderful and just like refreshing and just learning a lot of new things about, myself and the community and just really being able to appreciate nature more, and just be around nature and the green. And it's just so peaceful, so I'm loving that. I am a 3-time cancer survivor. And I guess, survivor and thriver and all of those words, I feel like I waver on which one I pick, sometimes it's survivor, sometimes it's thriver, sometimes but yeah, I started out my cancer journey fairly young when I was 26 and have had 2 others since then. And I have a wonderful dog named Chip. He's my little buddy, wonderful husband and partner and best friend who's, kind of kept me grounded and supports me through all of life's craziness and fun times. And yeah, those are all the like things I can think of off the top of my head.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you have an earliest memory of cancer, like maybe before your diagnosis? Could you trace back like when you first heard about what it was?
Yeah, that is, oh man, that's a really good question. So I have, like, when you asked that, I had a couple things come to mind. I think the first thing that came to mind for me was I was watching this 2020 special, probably back in, I don't know, probably like early 2000s or something like that. And it was about this lady that had this super rare bone marrow cancer, and it could only be healed. She could only survive if she had found her birth family. She was adopted as an infant, didn't know her birth family. And the story was all around her experience, not only kind of handling her cancer diagnosis and what that meant, but also trying to find birth family who would be willing to do a bone marrow transplant. And it really resonated with me because I was adopted as an infant. I don't know any family history. I know some now, but at the time I didn't know any family history. And when I was 19, right around the time I saw that, I went to start a small journey on trying to find my birth family, mostly because I wanted the family history, medical history. After watching that episode, I was like, oh, there are things I should probably prepare for,
Yeah.
So that was one of my first kind of experiences with cancer really standing out to me. I think my first kind of introduction to cancer was my grandmother passing of cancer. She died when I was probably 10 or 11. She had colon cancer. So just kind of at a really young age, trying to understand what that meant. I didn't really understand it fully the way I understand it now. I just knew that, she was sick in the hospital. She was probably going to pass. My dad was having a hard time. The family was having a hard time.
Yeah.
But then the third thing that really stood out to me when you asked that question was, I remember after being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2005/6, I remember having this I don't know, really deep down feeling of kind of expecting it. I don't know how to, and it wasn't like when I was diagnosed, I wasn't surprised, or I was like, I knew that was going to happen, but it was just like something deep inside me that it kind of felt like it was inevitable. It's really hard to explain. And I don't know if that's because I was young and my grandmother passed of cancer, and maybe because I was so young and was kind of impressed upon me at a young age, that was just there, just one of those things subconsciously. But yeah, those are my first three things that kind of stand out as my introductions to cancer and, understanding that.
Yeah. So I've been reading your memoir, 26 and Fucked. And it's really great. I'm really enjoying it. And
Thank you.
Something that stood out to me was your description of the moment that you heard you have cancer, and the way that in that first moment you were very even, not a big emotional reaction. And that the first time that the wave of overwhelm came was when you shared the news with one of your partners at the time.
Yep.
So I'm interested to hear how you remember that experience now, and both the initial moment of diagnosis and then also the first time you really let yourself feel it.
Yeah. It's funny how there are experiences that are just kind of etched into your mind. It's sometimes when I think back on these things, it's like I can remember the whole setting and everything that was going on, right? When I received the diagnosis, to be honest, it was super unexpected, right? I had gone in to just do a follow-up. It was just going to be my follow-up post my lumpectomy, right? Quote unquote lumpectomy. I had found the lump myself. I had gone to a surgeon, and she was pretty adamant that it was nothing and it was just a lump, and I was young, and these things happen when you're young, and no big deal, right? And I kind of pressed just to have it removed because, in the back of my mind, it bothered me, and I didn't like having something there. But also, it was right on my bra line. It was underwires were the thing, in 2005 and 6. Everybody had underwires. That's what you wore, right?
Yeah.
And I could not wear my bra without constantly tugging at it, because it was right at that underwire line. And I was like, this just really bothers me, And so we went in, and the surgeon was like, you're going to have a scar. You're so young. Are you sure you want to? And I'm like, yes, please, let's just take it out, So we went in, had it removed, scheduled the follow-up appointment before the removal. And the follow-up appointment was literally just going to be for me to go in and her tell me it was removed and check out stitches and, and then be on my way, right? So I went by myself to the follow-up appointment, was just waiting. And then the doctor, came in just kind of seemingly rushed, came in kind of quick, sat down kind of quick, seemed kind of exacerbated, like she had a lot of appointments that day, just sat down, opened my file, turned to me and was like, okay, so you have cancer. And I was like, I don't understand this. You told me that it was nothing. We did the fine needle aspiration and that came back with nothing. We did the ultrasounds and you guys told me that it was like dense tissue, so you couldn't see anything. So it was nothing. I'm like, how did this happen? She was like, did the biopsy. And as soon as I cut into the cyst or the mass, that's when I knew. I could tell. And I guess for whatever reason, the little bugger, he made himself look like just a normal kind of cell. And then she cut into it. And I guess, whatever's inside there is when she knew. And I think, thinking back on it, I think that in that room with her, I was very matter of fact because in a way I felt like she wasn't. And it wasn't that she was like overly emotional or didn't seem to have things together, but it was because all of the things that she was telling me needed to happen now, quote unquote, now, were like coming at me hard and fast. Okay, you have cancer. All right, you have to do chemo. You have to remove everything, get mastectomies, do a full hysterectomy. You're only this years old, blah, blah, blah. So she was like coming at me with all these things really fast. And then I didn't have time to process emotions. Yeah. I was like trying to process all of the things that she was telling me. Like, you have to remove everything. Well, I mean, like, first, let me know the stage of cancer. Like, am I dying right this second? Like, why do we have to do that? So I was just trying to get a handle on what was happening. And once we kind of moved through all of that and, I let her know what I would like to do, who I would like to talk with. She gave me some time frames to like get things done by, meet with doctors, make my decisions, that whole thing. I think, I walked out of there and it was definitely, the air had changed to me a little bit. Things were a little bit brighter. It was, my senses were definitely, I think, a little heightened, probably from going into like a pseudo survival mode from kind of weighing off all the, remove everything and do all this stuff right now. And when I met up with my partner at the time at the coffee shop that we like to frequent, I think that was when I was finally felt allowed to let my emotions come forward. And I remember literally just thinking to myself, like, what the fuck just happened? What's going to happen now? And a lot of times just being blank, my mind just being blank, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what was going to happen next or how to process stuff. And it was just tears and some frustration and some anger. And, I think being in a comfortable space that I had frequented often. I loved that coffee shop. I loved the feel, the smell, the music, the whole thing. It was a comfort zone for me. And it just gave me the freedom to kind of let go of those emotions and let it come out, so to speak.
Yeah. I love sharing about the environment's role, like not just that you were now talking to a person that you had built trust with, but also just the context. I just got this visual of, the hospital room in contrast to the coffee shop, and the way that we're sort of taught that medical facilities aren't a place for emotions. They're a place for,
right,
looking for the right answer and the right cure and, action oriented.
Yeah.
Which I thought we would talk about this later, but it's making me think about your project with the Atrium Foundation. And since we're here, I'm wondering, from where you sit now, what would you have liked that environment to be like if you could just dream anything of the moment of your first diagnosis? Like, who would you have in the room? What would it look like, smell like, all that stuff?
Yeah, I love that question, honestly. And kind of understanding that the setting that you're in, right, from first meeting with you and kind of seeing how comfortable your place looks, right, the plant, neutral tones, the bookshelf, art, things like that. I really do think that as much as you can get some care, as much as you can get care in an office, in a medical office, there should be a comfort level to it. It should feel warm. It should feel inviting. I mean, this is our health. These are our bodies that we're dealing with here. Nobody puts their body in this like ultra sterile environment all the time. If we think about our homes and our home offices and the clothes we put on our bodies, it's all around comfort. It's all around warmth. That's how our doctor's offices should feel. And, I think a lot about some of the office spaces and the office space designs that we see now, where there's comfortable chairs, plants, like I was saying, are maybe some smells of coffee or teas or spices, things like that can really help settle people, I think would be my ideal setting. So I think that needs to change for sure. I think the notion of people being emotionless when they get diagnosis, I don't think that's fair, just like you said, right? We're in a setting where we're just taught from the very beginning, the day that we're born, that it's action oriented, you're making decisions, it's a bit emotionless, right? And then when you're given a diagnosis and then you don't react, and then your doctor is like, why aren't you reacting? Which is what my surgeon said. I walked away thinking like something was wrong with me, like, oh, was I supposed to be crying? Was I supposed to be breaking down? But to your point, that's not the setting you're in when you go there. And so I don't think it's quite fair for people to put that on themselves or for a care team, someone from your care team to put that on you either, or make a comment like that. I think the people in the room, I think that's a very, very important question, regardless of what you're going to the doctor for, or what you think you're going to the doctor for. Have somebody should be with you, a friend, a partner, a close coworker. If you have a work buddy that you trust, just have a buddy with you, really, because I think that out of all the doctor's appointments that I've been to, there could always be a surprise, and a lot of times when there are the surprises and you hear it and it's directed at you, you might blank out a little bit, you might hear the Charlie Brown, teacher voice, like, like your mind's playing catch up. And I think another thing we have to understand is it is a defensive mechanism that we're all born with. You are approached with something that is frightful, that is new, that is a bit threatening. Your mind then goes into defense mechanism mode, and you may not be able to kind of take in everything that's being said. So I think a buddy is super important because they can at least help fill some of those gaps. I think the other person that I would have loved to have had in the room, and this kind of bridges into part of the long-term mission of the foundation or, the nonprofit, is having somebody there who is more of that emotional care team. Our surgeons, our physicians, our oncologists, they're focused. They're there to help save your life. They're there to help fix the organs in the body. They're not there, and this is not a bad thing or like a strike against them, but they're not there for our mental health, and I really think that surgeons, oncology offices should have either on staff or a connection with organizations that can provide a mental health and wellness specialist, therapist there for somebody who's going to receive some sort of news that's really impacting, their life or their long-term health, because they can come in and really maybe help you process what you just heard at the time.
Yeah.
They can be a sounding board. They're non-threatening. They're a neutral party. They're not the person that you have to feel like you have to be on your P's and Q's with because they're making decisions. They're going to,
Yeah.
they're going to do surgery on you or administer chemo. It's different, right?
Yeah.
So I really think that should be kind of a wave of the future and something that I'm focused on with the nonprofit. Hopefully, we'll be able to do some studies, partner with some oncologists, and see how that goes.
Yeah, I love that vision. And as I was writing some questions for this conversation, the word cancer doula came to mind. It's been really normalized to have, a midwife or a doula come into normal Western medical birth centers. That's
Yeah.
like totally accepted that you can bring a doula or midwife along, and sometimes they're even employees of the hospital. And yeah, so I was like, maybe that's an interesting model to look to, and especially with breast cancer, I think that translation is really natural because it's already about reproductive health.
Yep.
But yeah, but even beyond with any kind of cancer, and especially it's so important, like, before even the diagnosis has happened, just the like, if cancer might be on the table, can we provide emotional support even before we know what the diagnosis is going to be? Because that's, I think, one of the scariest parts, certainly one of the parts that everyone I've interviewed has the most vivid memory of, is just that moment of you have cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. How amazing would it be if there was emotional support?
Exactly. I love that. I actually really love that idea of before, because a lot of times when you're going to see a specialist, there's already a question somewhere that somebody
Yeah.
has, whether it's recognized for you or not. There's a doctor who has actively said, oh, this could be a possibility. So I want
Yeah.
you to go see this person. I think that's a super interesting and important aspect because it probably would help people prepare a little bit more for hearing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since we've been referencing it a little bit, what is the Atrium Foundation?
Yeah, so the Atrium Foundation is a nonprofit that I started last year, and we pay bills for people affected by cancer. So what that means is the people are cancer patients or survivors, or they're co-survivors and caregivers. And the bills can range from medical bills to living bills. So that could be, rent, mortgages, groceries, utilities, to mental health and wellness. So mental health and wellness is a bit broad for us, but it's intentionally broad because mental health and wellness can come in many different ways, right? So that could be sessions with a therapist, but that could also be vitamin treatments, IV therapy, right? That insurance doesn't pay for. That goes into your mental health and wellness. It could be school uniforms for your kids because now I am less stressed that I'm able to get them in a place where they can be productive and they're not stressed, So mental health and wellness is fairly open for us right now. And it's intentional just because the whole goal behind paying bills is also to help reduce stress, because I think we all know that stress is not a good thing for anybody, whether you're completely healthy or if you have a cancer diagnosis, it's probably the worst thing for you. And so we want to pay bills because we want to help people not be as stressed and give them some hope and some support out for their journey. It takes a community, so we want to help in that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was just so glad to hear from you. You actually reached out to us, but we've, through our work and our community gatherings on Zoom and just the community that we are building through Cancer Talks, we've met so many people who have trouble with money, and I've had a few different experiences of trying to connect them to funds, especially those things that aren't covered by insurance. And it's really hard. And we, have a lot of people who feel better using alternative treatments all these things that are just really hard to find support for. So it was so exciting when you reached out to me, and I was like, oh my God, it's exactly what we've been looking for.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And a lot of the reason why, I started this is through my own experiences. Like you said, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the time, mastectomies were not paid for. Insurance saw them as
So crazy.
just elective, just you still want boobs, you don't have to have them, so we're not going to pay for it. That was a thing. Also, fertility treatments at the time was not covered. It was 2006, and being a young survivor, it's unfortunate that there are so many young survivors now. I don't like that, but I am glad that things have changed and there are more voices that are speaking up and really pushing for legislation change, because fertility treatments weren't covered at the time. Plus, even if you don't have those, you need to take time off of work to heal and rest and go through your treatments and get through surgery. And that typically means a reduction in pay, or some people have to stop working altogether. And yeah, you may have insurance, but that doesn't pay your rent. It doesn't pay your mortgage. It doesn't pay your car payment or your childcare fees or groceries or all of those things that we need.
Yeah.
I really wanted to help people in that way.
On our first call, we were talking about the way that most efforts to, fund cancer are about the cure. And I just think you speak so lucidly to the fact that, even if you are lucky enough to get the treatments you need and live through and beyond cancer, that might not even have been the most challenging part for you. Like, what about when you speak to breakups in relationships, debt,
Yep.
job insecurity, family conflict, like all these things that I think are as important as whether your body is physically healed. I mean, to me, like emotional and social and like spiritual aspects of life are as important as the physical body health. So
Exactly.
yeah. One of these aspects that I know has been part of your journey is depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also something that I don't feel like gets talked about that much in relation to cancer.
Yeah.
So wondering if you could speak to that, and then also to what some things you do that help you move through.
Move through it. Yeah. I think it's very true. We, to kind of touch on what you were saying, the healing aspect is beyond treatments. It's beyond surgeries, right? When it comes to cancer, any major health issue, right? The body heals, right? You move through chemo, and of course, it totally sucks at the time. I mean, it's nothing that I feel anybody should have to go through, but once it's all over, you kind of get thrown into something I've said before, and speaking with other people is like, you get the diagnosis, and you getting through or healing from cancer, it's almost decided for you. Your doctors set up your chemo. They tell you what surgeries to go to. They tell you when and where to be there. Hydrate. Rest. Do all this stuff. And so it's almost a little bit like mindless in the sense that you are having to actively make these decisions, right?
Yeah.
So you go through the motions, and then you're like, holy shit, chemo sucks. My body hurts from my surgery. And you're focused on that. But then when you get out of all that, it's kind of like your doctors are like, boom, boom, yay, no evidence of disease, go forth and like live. And then you're like coming out of it, and you're just like, I don't know what the hell just happened. Like, what happened to the last 6 months to a year of my life,
Yeah.
On top of having to either have decisions made for you about body parts that you may no longer have anymore or can't use, your dreams, your wants, your desires, who you thought of yourself before and now, or what you think of yourself before and now, all of those things change. So to your point, the mental health and wellness I think you're absolutely right. It's probably equally in line with survivorship as healing the body. When I was going through my breast cancer and even with my ovarian cancers, I definitely went through depression. And I think when I was 26, I didn't know what that was. I mean, most of the things that you hear when you're young are like people who are like on the edge, right? Right? They're like literally on the cliff already, and it's super severe. And I didn't identify that I was as impacted as I was mentally and spiritually, but I was angry. I was angry. I was a bit confused. And it's funny because I even still say it to this day every now and then to my husband if I have a moment, like, I feel defective. I used to feel like, what man is gonna want to be with me and have kids with me? Or even if I don't have kids, they're literally signing up for a life of dealing with cancer. Who's gonna want that? So I went through a lot of that. And at 26, because I didn't recognize it, I wasn't given any pamphlets on mental health and wellness, which is amazing because I was given a world of pamphlets that's like, if they were money, I would have been freaking rich, right? All the pamphlets you get, but I didn't get any information on speaking with anybody about it. And I think the closest I got was a journal, because I think that's when people were really starting to get into this realm of like, oh, there is a mental health and wellness aspect to this, right? So journal. And that's how I know how angry I was, because sometimes I would look back at my writings, and some of them were calm and introspective, and they did shed a lot of light on, the personal strengths and perseverances, but a lot of it really was angry, depressed. I didn't like what was happening. And probably even before my last treatments were done, my last chemos were done, I started drinking. And at first it was like, oh, a glass of wine. I'm just going to go out with my friends. I haven't done this in 5 months. It'll be no big deal. And then after chemo was over, it quickly moved into like, blacking out, waking up on somebody's couch, somebody's bathroom, throwing up, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And then me just further going into myself thinking something is wrong with me. What am I doing? I just went through chemo. Why am I putting myself through this? And it's tough. It's tough. And I think looking back at it, I don't regret it. I mean, I do wish that there were some things that I could have done differently or handled differently. But I think those experiences brought me here today to being to wanting to talk about it and letting people know that those things will happen and it's normal and it should happen. And if they do, talk to somebody, find somebody, ask your doctor for a reference. If you don't want to ask your doctor, reach out to the cancer community, right? Because there's a lot of people out there now who are willing to help. And I think the way that we all move through those things are different. There's not one formula. For some people, it's journaling. For some people, it's talking about it. For some people, it's art, music, posting on social media, talking to somebody, getting a dog, just anything that puts you in a happy place. I think we have to think on it. We have to allow the feelings to set in. So I am by no means saying don't let the emotions set in. I mean, cry, be angry, yell into the pillow, go to the gym and hit the 20-pound sack, just do some air punches, whatever you need to do to get the emotion out. It's normal. Do it. But ground yourself. I think we always all have to remember to ground ourselves. And the things that I do now when I find myself starting to get into that headspace is remember to breathe, take some breaths, take a moment, find a happy place in your home, a coffee shop, library, bookstore, wherever it is that you feel good. Go there, do that, go for a walk, jog in place, do some stretching. I mean, I think looking back, I thought that the healing and the processing had to be this big event, a conference, a support group.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. And those things are intimidating. Honestly, they're super intimidating. I tried the support groups, and I'm not saying they're not helpful, but we're all our own people. And I think you understand who you are and what settings you're comfortable in. You're not going to heal if you're going to put yourself in a completely uncomfortable situation.
Right. Yeah, it's not for
If
everybody.
anything, it makes it worse. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a process to us each in our own place individually. There's no right or wrong. It takes time, and it's probably going to go on for a while. I mean, it took me years to not feel like a defective failure of a person who came out of cancer, and I mean, I still get a little bit emotional about it today sometimes. But I've come to, let it settle in, let it take its course, and then just remember we got to keep moving forward and find that golden nugget that can help you, process it. They're there. It's just sifting through it,
Yeah. I'm wondering where your anchor was directed at any point in your journey. Like, who have you been mad at about, or what, or yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it all teed off when I had my mastectomies, because when I was 26, I had this kind of life of knowing that I wanted to have a family, knowing I wanted to have children, right? I wanted to have 4. I wanted to give birth to them. I wanted to breastfeed them. That was my thing. I think a lot of that came from being adopted. And as much as I love and adore my family, they've always just from day one, I'm them, they're me, we're one, right? But being an adopted person, there's always a little bit of something that you carry with you, a little bit of something that's missing. And that's not a fault on anybody. It's just how it is. So I wanted my family. I wanted to grow a family that way. I wanted to know what that was. And when I was given my diagnosis and my surgeon was like, remove everything. And I was like, wait a minute. I want to do these things. I really fought off removing everything.
Yeah.
I signed me up for the worst chemo possible, fertility preservation, I'll do radiation, whatever I need to do. I did all that. And then probably maybe a year later, I don't even think it was a total year, after one of my routine scans, a abnormality was found in the same area that my breast cancer had originally originated from. And the doctor was like, reoccurrence. This is the evidence we need, mastectomies. And I'm like, okay, I'm scared, I'm like, oh God, reoccurrence already. I'm not ready. I don't want to do chemo again. Mastectomies, let's go. So we get in, we do the mastectomies, and then I'm told that there was no cancer. It was there was no cancer.
Oh my God.
It was just, it was basically scarred tissue from the radiation.
Oh my God. And the mastectomies weren't covered for you either.
Mastectomies are not covered. I had to fight. I had to fight for the coverage, but I did have to pay for some money. But we were able to get some of it covered. But it was a fight. So on top of coming out of pocket, I didn't want mastectomies. I just didn't, And then her words to me were, well, it was going to have to happen anyway. And the reason why she said that was because I did my BRCA testing and I am BRCA positive. And so that's one of the long-term things. Okay, fine. So be it. Would have had to happen anyway, but I didn't want it now. It's my body.
Yeah.
I should be able to get to choose what I want to do with my body and not have somebody, dictate that and then pacify it like that,
It just strikes me the way that she couldn't take accountability for it. Like, there's no, like, I messed up. I'm sorry. You were right. You could have done this later, or we could have, like just admitting like a friend would that they were wrong.
No.
None
of that. That was pretty much the last time I spoke with her.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember being on the phone and I was like, just crushed, a piece of paper, like somebody wadded it up and, tossed it. And I was like flying in the air, like, yeah. And then to get those words, from somebody who, harbored plaques on the wall, has obviously made a career out of being, and I don't mean to sound, like I'm, what is the word I'm looking for? Like putting a box around things, but but also to hear that from a woman, somebody who is a mother who had pictures of her kids all over the place. It just felt like just super, I don't know, it was cold. And I think that was when the anger kind of started. I was angry at her. I was angry at the situation. It was mostly the situation and her. I was just angry. I was just like, this isn't, this isn't right. I think though, as time progressed, I did have problems dealing with the relationship side of things, and I think what I love about your question and the reason why I'm pausing is because when I don't know if I have ever really thought about who or what I was really angry at or with. I just was angry. Yeah. And I really think it just came down to not really feeling like I was in control of things, not feeling like I could get a handle on it and make some decisions on my own, and then just those dreams just slowly being ticked away at, So mastectomies, then BRCA gene, and being told that I was going to have all the kids that I wanted by 35, because at 36, I was going to have the full hysterectomy. I mean, that was what my care team was telling me I had to do. And then I'm like, I'm 26. That only gives me like 9 years to like find the man of my dreams or find the person of my dreams, get pregnant, have babies, like be settled, be financially able to do that. Like now I'm in debt. So it was just a situation. It was just, I think, a little bit too much all at once for me to handle. And then being angry, I think really at the gene. I think the gene was also a life changer because that's what really started making me feel inadequate as a person and as a woman. And that's where I really started projecting my anger on not having kids or not having family or not having a partner. I'm like, oh, maybe they can smell it on me. My defective genes. Nobody wants to have kids with me. Your mind starts going out there. And I think all of that really culminated with the BRCA gene and my timeline.
Is there a moment you reflect on as a turning point, like coming out of your relationship with alcohol and coming out of that anger? Not that either of those are fully like resolved, but
no, there was, and I do have my drinking under control now. I definitely know what not to do. I think a lot of things too that we have to understand in our society is we're not taught how to deal with alcohol. We're just not. I mean, it's there. It's in like every store, it's every place you go, happy hour, brunch, do this, do that. And it's supposed to be this normal thing. But I mean, it's a drug. It's like Tylenol. You don't take too much of it. You overdose and then you get side effects, And so when I really had my moment of trying to come out of my state of mind and my depression was it was around 2000, and I would say 8 or 9, so 3 years later. Okay, this is, I mean, to me, that's a significant amount of time to be wrestling with these things, right, for 3 years. And I think something that I don't know if you've gotten to in the book yet, but something I touch on very heavily towards the end of the book is I got pregnant in 2007 with the partner that I was with when I was diagnosed. He wasn't ready. I was like, it's a miracle, you know. But I kind of was slowly, you know, chipped away out to not have the baby. And I had an abortion, which also, you know, I'm very pro-choice. You have to know when you're ready and when you're not ready. I mean, being a person who was adopted, I fully know that my mom could have made another choice. And, you know when we're ready for those things. And even though I think I was ready and I wanted to be ready and I know I could have handled it, just the situation again, cancer, BRCA, barely a year out of chemo. I don't know what my body's going to do with the baby. Yeah. My boyfriend is not in the same state I am in anymore. He's trying to do all these things. Yes, he wants to marry me and get together, but like things are crazy now, you know? Yeah. And I personally thought I would never have an abortion. And when that happened, and I did, I think that also spiraled me. I mean, it really, spiraled me, because it definitely, it broke my walls on some of my own personal values and who I thought of myself. But I think also not understanding pregnancy and what your body is going through, these really big chemical reactions, terminating a pregnancy, and then your body still trying to go through all of this processing that it's doing, I think also really had an effect on my mental state that I didn't realize was going on at the time. Anyways, long story short, I went through a hard time processing that, and I had kept the sonogram picture that they had given me. And, drunken nights, being angry, I would come in, I would look at the picture, things would go even worse, it would spiral even more. I'm like, out of control. And it was because of a boyfriend that I had after several years. He was like, you can't keep doing this to yourself. You just can't. You're torturing yourself with this picture. Wow. And he was like, I know it means a lot to you, but we got to let go, Wow. And I kind of took a step back, and I had been thinking about all of the things that have been going on. And then one day I took the picture, wrote a letter to my unborn child, put the letter with the picture, put it in an envelope, and I drove myself to the botanical gardens in Austin. Mm-hmm. And I just walked around. And I found this spot. It was in the Asian garden section. So very, very serene, very beautiful, little waterfall, lilies. And I found this spot that was kind of out of the way. And I just sat there for a minute on a log, and I just kind of talked to myself, kind of talked to, my unborn child. And then I buried the picture. Wow. I buried it. I put a stone on it. And I think that's when I just allowed myself to breathe again, Mm-hmm. And say, okay, it's time to just kind of accept these things, and there's no changing it. There's no going back. We're not forgetting. It's just moving forward. And I got up and just started taking steps. Mm-hmm. I kind of stopped hanging around with people that I used to hang around with. I know it sounds shitty, because they were there with me through some important times, but it was a toxic situation for me. Not that they were toxic people, but it was a toxic situation for me because it reminded me of everything that had happened.
Yeah.
And then it would spiral,
Yeah.
So I had to separate myself, and that was really hard, and I felt bad. And I've said sorries lots of times to them. They don't know, but I have, because it makes me feel like a bad person, but I had to. And I just tried to slowly start making decisions to not put myself in situations that would be toxic and would lead to drinking a lot, lead to the spiral effect. So, that meant stop going to that coffee shop I was telling you about. It held on too many memories. I had to stop going there. And they had a bar. So I go there and memories, and I'm like, I'm just going to have a drink. And then 10 million drinks later, I had to stop hanging out with certain groups of people. I chose to meet some friends at different places. Let's go to the library, or let's go to the lake, or let's go, someplace, right? So, to answer your question, that was the moment where I really felt like I was going to try to kind of turn some things around. The change moment and the letting go moment was having that ceremony with myself. Yeah.
I'm so moved by that description of this ritual that you made for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is like a ritual and a commitment to yourself to honor and then also let go. And I mean, I was just crying with you just now and just feeling how much love you were activating in that moment. And I want to take a little moment of silence for your child and for your strength in that moment, because I'm just really moved by that.
Thank you.
I think this conversation has been really just organic, and I feel so honored that you shared so much with me. And there's so many things we could have talked about that we didn't cover, but is there anything you want to say before we close?
No, I agree. This has been awesome. Probably one of the best talks, and thank you for providing the space and the comfortability to talk about it. I think the only thing that I can think of is, like we were talking about, the healing process is going to take time for all of us, and we're all going to have to do it in our own way. It could be a day, it could be a month, it could be a year. But I think the one thing we all have to keep in mind is there's no right or wrong way. There's no perfect timeline. It is what it is, and we have to let ourselves process those things. And I love how you worded it. We have to find those rituals to kind of help move us through those things that may seem unconventional, but if that's what helps, that's what we need to do. And reach out to people. The community is strong, and we're all here, and it takes a community. So, don't hesitate to reach out. And we don't do things alone on a day-to-day, so you shouldn't have to feel like you need to heal alone either. So.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. Cancer Talks is a platform for anyone who has been touched by cancer. Write to us at info@cancertalks.com if you have a story to share. If you'd like to be in community with other cancer thrivers seeking personal transformation, join us for free workshops on Zoom. Visit cancertalks.com/Zoom to register. If you're moved to donate, please visit cancertalks.com/donate.